Hi everyone, I'm back with a new YouTube video, and joining me is a friend of mine, and her name is Fiona Waddell. And hi Fiona, thank you so much for joining me and for
No,
actually taking the time to spend with me, and thank you.
no problem. Super excited.
Oh, that's awesome. So I know that you saw my last mediumship reading with Barb because we have all met and you're friends with Barb. So I met the two of you at a psychic fair, and we've shared like quite a few psychic fairs
Yes.
together, but we didn't really get a chance to talk a lot, and that's a good thing because that meant we were busy.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. And also we were kind of like across from each other or across the room. So
Yeah, we
didn't get
never
to,
got to be booth buddies.
yes,
So,
yeah, booth buddies. So I'll get you to sort of introduce yourself and tell us what you do, because I know like you do something different than I do.
yeah, well, I've got two parts. I have my shows that I do my readings where I do psychic tarot. I'm also a medical medium, and an energy healer as well. So I work helping people with future possibilities, basics like love, health, career, spiritual development, and that's my show circuits and my readings. But
Okay.
outside of that, I teach classes on psychic development. I have a monthly membership where I essentially help women tap into their inner magic, which is their intuition, to help them create a blueprint for their goals. So if they're looking to improve their relationships, their health, their purpose, their money flow. Um, so I teach the metaphysical to women so that they can tap into their best life ever. So I do two things. I have my shows and then I work helping women with classes and development.
That's amazing. You know, I took a psychic development class many years ago in Toronto and met some great people. And if you had have been around or if I had have known you at that time, I definitely would have taken that because I really do recommend that people do psychic development work and with other people. I think that's so important because I mean, there's enough you can learn by books, reading books, watching YouTube channels, doing classes, but where you're not actually talking with the person. I've taken classes with John Holland, but never had like a one on one with him.
Right.
So that's amazing. You do a lot of one on one work too, right?
Yes, I do one-on-one, I do group. I've also spoken at events. So yeah, I'm out there helping as much as I can.
That's great. So are you not shy or nervous when you get on stage or?
Oh, absolutely. I do have anxiety. And I am an extrovert, no, an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, well, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, I I know the difference between uh fear, and then I also understand like the differences between fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble, and then the nervous anticipation. That's what I feel, that's a good thing to feel because it means I'm breaking barriers. I'm leaning into um new changes. So speaking in front of people, I'm comfortable with it. I can do it. And once I get up there, I have no issues. But yeah, I get the butterflies before I step out there and talk, even before Zoom calls. I always have to do a quick shake of the ground. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm the same with Zoom calls, especially and now doing this on camera. So I used to actually sing in a band with my now husband. We've been together for many years, but when we were in a band together, I was the singer and he was the drummer, and we were just friends and in the band. And we were nervous before shows, and we would always have a shot of tequila
Love it.
and sometimes two. And then that, the first couple minutes was nerve wracking, but then it was fine.
Yep.
But with psychic work or mediumship work, I definitely don't drink
No,
beforehand.
it doesn't help.
No,
It doesn't work in our favor. So
no.
yeah.
Even the night before, I do not partake, which I don't drink very much. But, anyways.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Oh, so you also mentioned medical medium. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Medical medium, medical intuitive.
In medical intuitive. Okay. So I am asked and more about health. And I don't, I say I'm not a medical intuitive, but it definitely comes out in the tea leaves and in the oracle cards that I use. So I do. It's the symbols. I can see different
Yes.
areas like lungs. Lungs look a lot like hips.
Yep.
But I always see the reproductive system, a woman's reproductive system. So often I can see symbols where maybe an ovary has is damaged or there's an issue there. It just sort of pinpoints some
Mhm.
areas. Often, too, if someone has lost a child, that's where I see it in that area. So sometimes it looks like a tree, and that could mean the nervous system. It's so interesting. I'll get symbols where there's a head and then something pointing to the head, like just an arrow, or like it's
Mhm.
sort of like a note for me. Take a look at or mention something about the head, and that often means dementia or Alzheimer's or potential, um, blunt force to the head.
Yes.
And so it's so interesting, and I really want to dive further into that. So how do you do that? How does that work for you?
Well, so with psychic development, when you study in my classes, I break down all the different clairs.
Mhm,
And so my strongest clair was clairsentience, and I've been
mhm.
open to clairsentience my whole life, which is the ability to feel. I
Yeah.
was a personal trainer for 10 years, and people used to come in for an assessment, and I could just start taking notes on their body before they even started telling me what was going on. And I didn't think it was weird. People did, but I didn't.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I started jumping into this world and going into psychic work um, that it just became a part of what I do. But now I can actually break it down logically. When I teach medical intuition in my classes, I go back to the auric bodies. We have our physical and emotional auric bodies. And so when we're tuning in and channeling somebody's energy, we're going to ask the higher self or the client to show me what's in their physical and emotional auric bodies. Because we can go like spiritual and then go into their loved ones as well. So that's what we're tapping into is that energy. So what I discovered and I've learned and now I teach is that we plug into the physical. Now for me, I receive messages in my body. You might actually receive messages as symbols, images, and colors. Like it depends how you receive. So when I plug in to a client, I start scanning them, but then I'm reading it in my body. And I just start taking notes. So, for example, Alzheimer's dementia, I'll get a lot of dizziness in the mind and I'll get
Mhm.
really thirsty for some reason. Um, and I'll get a heaviness. I might get burning sensations. When it comes to the reproductive organs, um, I will get heat on one side or static. I've always found with women in general, their uterus, depending where they are in their cycle, I can like, there's different, every woman has static of some sort, depending where they're sitting. It's just if there's accompanied with burning or anything like that, like heat that I feel tells me something's off. So I get pulses, I get pings, I get sensations, and I just start taking notes. And I've learned because I'm also a nerd. I love human anatomy and science and biology. So I'm always reading and researching on different health conditions. Um, and so from that, I can't diagnose. You shouldn't diagnose.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, but
Yeah.
I will say, these are the areas where it's showing up, and like I recommend you must go see a doctor whether they choose to go with a naturopath or osteopath, I'm not going to, in no way am I responsible for how you choose, but you need some kind of diagnosis to help you with this because there is something going on there. And I have helped a lot of people with that. I've had people come in with rare conditions and I've discovered it. Um, and they weren't expecting me to pick up on it, but yeah, it's there. It's in our literal physical auric body. It is there. So that's what I'm plugging into and reading when I do it. And each student, each person is different in how they receive. So mine is in the body. Um, some can see colors. I've worked with other psychics who can say, I see blue here, I see yellow here, and they know what that means. Yours is
Mhm,
probably symbols. So like
mhm.
clairaudience, for example.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've always thought of myself as clairsentient, but as a visual person, I've always been an artist. That's how this like that's why tea leaf reading works really well for me. It's all about symbols, and somehow that just helps. And I totally agree with you on the not diagnosing part. I definitely don't do that as well, and I
Hmm.
wouldn't trust anyone who does,
Yeah,
or who says or who suggests, oh, go take these pills, or that thing.
yeah.
And speaking of that, I've been through medical issues myself, and I'm definitely all for the medical field. So
Yep.
a good balance of both, that's
It's
for
yeah,
sure.
there's a middle path. You need a little bit of
Yeah,
both.
yeah.
Yes.
I went through cancer myself, and that was in 2014. Actually, it was pretty soon after I did my a lot of my psychic development work, at the end of 2014,
Yeah.
and that was right around the time when everyone was working on be positive. Things always happen for a reason. You should don't do chemo. Go take mushrooms, and all these things. Which
Yeah.
I know there's a definitely a good side to that.
Yep.
But that was at like the big time of David Avocado Wolf, and I'll probably lose people here because I'm saying this,
Oh,
but and I do see that seeping back in. But so I do really see that sort of medical side, and for us not to diagnose. But wow, there's definitely a lot to medical intuition and
there is.
medical mediumship. It's amazing. Carolyn Mace is really interesting. I'm sure you've learned all from her as well. So, speaking of that, we've both been through some health issues,
Yes.
and I'm just about to talk about, or maybe make a video on being an empath and how empathic. Empath sounds so woo woo, doesn't it? But it's not
Yeah.
so much anymore. Like for us, that's just
It's a
nothing. But
lingo. Yeah.
yeah, but it is more mainstream now. People are realizing all about empaths and sensitive and highly sensitive people.
Yes.
And I'm one of them. I know you're one of them. And so, I just want to get your opinion on this. Do you think that for us to be seers or intuitives or whatever you want to call it, medium, doesn't matter to me. Do you feel like we have to be empathic to do what we do? Do you?
No. Yes. No. Okay. It helps.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. So if we go back to what an empath is somebody who feels the emotions. And typically 99% of the time, empaths have experienced some form of trauma, which has caused them to have a hyper awareness. So their clairs, their unseen senses are heightened and open. They might not have control of them, but now that the stress is gone or the fear factor, the trauma trigger is potentially, hopefully gone, their senses are still open. And that's where health issues and all this wild stuff can happen with empaths. But I genuinely believe everyone can tap into this world because it's there.
Mhm.
Um, Whether or not you've experienced trauma or not, it's just empaths come into the situation probably already open, frazzled. It's like almost like empaths because I also teach an empath empowerment class. It's almost like an exposed wire, copper
Mhm.
wire kind
Mhm.
of sparking. They just need covered and guidance and plugged into the right thing, and then they're off and going. So that they're probably a couple of steps ahead of someone
Mhm.
who's not experienced the need to be hyper aware. There are people who are born as HSPs, highly sensitive people. It's just their frequency, so they're open as well too. But if you're not fitting into one of those two categories and you're still interested in doing this work, come on out. It's there.
Mhm.
You just may have to. It's like someone who is sitting on a couch that wants to start running a marathon. It's just going to take them a bit, but once they get going, they're good, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's
that's
wonderful.
how I approach it.
That's a really good explanation, and I totally can see that. That's amazing. So I can see why people would want to take your courses and learn from that. I've noticed that some people can sort of read people's faces, or they know sort of like if you look at this in a person, that means this, or, one person I'm thinking of, I don't know if you've heard of Chase Hughes.
You know the name.
So he is a psyops guy. I think he
Okay.
like worked for maybe like correct me if I'm wrong. I'll look it up after, but
I know
maybe
what you're talking. I know
yeah,
exactly. Yes.
like worked
Yes.
for the FBI. He's trained people to interrogate people, and so he has this system basically, or he's an expert in how to read people and read their um, body language and just everything about them. And I do you feel like you put that into your work, or how does that work for you?
So it's a good example of who you're talking about is a TV series called Lie to Me.
I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, TV series. I think the lead actor is Tim Roth. Absolutely phenomenal. So you're talking about micro expressions, and so being able to see like twinges or I, I do see them. So most people who are potentially neurodivergent can see pattern recognition faster than the average duck. I am neurodivergent. So
Mm-hmm.
do we catch some of those things? Yes. When I'm typically reading a client, though, I try not to look at them because I try my best not to look at them because I do know I pick up on that stuff.
Wow.
I know
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a bit of an Achilles, so I want to be as authentic as possible when I'm reading. That's also why I really enjoy like doing online readings and doing distance healings. Because my clients have great experiences and I find I give better quality readings authentically when I'm not in the same room because I can literally pull on everything and I'm not watching them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, there is a portion of it. I do believe there are some readers who read fully and sometimes fish
Yeah.
from clients, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
When I'm giving mediumship readings, I'll say, I see this, this, and this. Does that resonate? Yes or no? Um, or I'll come right out and say, I see this symbol and this color. I don't understand. Does it make
Mm-hmm.
sense? And if they say no, I'm like, okay, put it in the parking lot because I've been told, like, I've had people contact me 2 weeks later and say, oh, you said the bluebird? I just saw a bluebird.
Mm-hmm.
It's always made sense as long as I don't filter. So I try, I'm so, because of what I do and teach, integrity is huge for me. I don't fish. I ask if it resonates. If not, we put it off because I do evidential based work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, yeah, there are readers out there who do fish, who use the micro expressions and the actions of the body. And it's not to be confused with the traditional Chinese medicine, the ability to read like the length of ears or coloring of the skin. That's a different. That's actually another modality. It's like palm reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused. This is how people are reacting. This is a
Yeah.
reactionary. So that's what they do in psyops. Is seeing your reactions and how you're speaking, how if you're leaning in or leaning back, tells you where you're going with the reading. Whereas the traditional medicine is like looking at like the eyes, the puffiness, or not to be confused with that. But this is an interactive reactionary, reading the person and and because there are readers out there that will make fluff up, and as long as you're leaning in and going, they'll keep going. So
Yeah.
I'm really big on not looking at the client as much as I can and just get validation.
Yeah.
Then that
That's
ensures that I'm not slipping into that.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. I totally agree that there are people out there that do that. I like to read total strangers. Like it's hard for you, even because I know you a little bit, it's even hard to read for you. I remember I had like one of my best friends said, "Oh, I want a reading because I would like to promote you to my clients." She's really good coach, and has clients all over the world. And I'm like, no, I don't. I know you too well. I've
Yeah,
grown up with you. I've known you since grade 5. And she said, no, no, you have to give me a reading. And so I did, and it was totally fine.
yeah,
But it's much
so
better
random.
to, yeah, much better to yeah, not read. I like to read the symbols, not the people. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. And that's why you are a great teacher, because you explained all of that really well.
Thank you.
And yeah, you know your stuff.
Yes, I do. It's what I love. So I
Yeah,
love teaching. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So what's up for you in the next coming weeks, or what, do you have any events coming up
Oh goodness.
or
Yes.
classes?
I'm doing a few things. I'm working on 2-day shows right now with Read events, so I've been doing that for a wee
Yeah.
bit. I've cut back from doing a lot of 3-day shows. I have a 3-day show in the future, but that's in March. But I'm working on my monthly membership, working with them and refining my programs. There's probably going to be uh, a more advanced version.
Oh,
It's in the works. It's probably not going to come out until April or May. Um, it's 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 taking on many forms right now because I'm also downloading and channeling a new healing modality. So
mm,
that's going off because I'm also a certified Reiki master teacher, and I work in several different healing modalities as well. So there's a couple of things happening in the background, like new courses and new programs, but I'm pouring myself into my membership, and because I have a Facebook group called Woo Woo Land.
oh, I love
So
that.
yes, and then I have a membership called Unlock, which I've been working on. So really, I've stepped back from the shows. I'm just doing 2-day shows right now, which I'm loving,
Hmm.
and yeah, I'm working on the courses and
Oh,
one-on-one sessions as well.
oh, that's great. So we were going to talk about health issues. I know we started talking about that, and I mentioned that, I went through cancer, and I know you've had some health issues, and
Hmm.
so I don't know if I attribute going through cancer to, and that kind of runs along our talk about empaths and being empathic, and understanding what people are going through. So, but I actually think that may have helped me in the long run going through that. So, how do you look at that? I know you've been through some health issues, and what have you gone through basically?
Well, with my health, it's been up and down. Oh goodness me. It took them 10 years to diagnose a gallbladder, and that got released in 2016, which looking back, I tried a long time to keep it and not have it
Hmm.
removed. That was back in 2016, but I know that was a result of poor work environment, stress, anger from my trauma that wasn't addressed. It all went to the gallbladder, which is where you hold anger and resentment.
Uh-huh.
So that was removed. And then I recovered like that. I still had little issues going on. But I've been taking care of myself. I'm blessed in that I got into this whole area of metaphysical healing along with Western medicine and being an advocate for myself because it took them 10 years and I kept going to doctors saying something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. Finally got that dealt with, and learned a lot with that experience. But recently, um, I did an out west tour. I went across Canada because I've been across Canada twice doing psychic fairs and shows.
Hmm.
And this last time I came back, June of 2023, I came back with a cough and these weird sweat, fever, weird things happening in and out of the ER. And I had a cough from June to January 2024. And I kept saying, there's something wrong with my lungs. There's something wrong. This doesn't make sense. Well, because I haven't smoked in 20 years and it was off and on. I had COPD. I was obese, so it must be this. Um, I'm perimenopausal, so it must be this. And I kept saying, it's
Hmm.
in my lungs. It's in my lungs. Please. There's an infection. Oh, no, no, no. Then in January 2024, I got my results back from respiratory tests saying I have either a connective tissue disease or interstitial lung disease, which could potentially be terminal, but the doctors, oh, it's just, you're going to be fine. We'll do more tests. I lost it at that point because
Mm.
life expectancy for some of the worst cases where it's like 3 to 5 years and nobody was giving me answers. So I said, that's it. I'm an intuitive and I know they're totally off the mark. So they said connective tissue, and I'm like, oh, it's autoimmune. So I don't have an autoimmune condition that's been tested recently too, so that blessed. Um, but I knew my nervous system was unhappy, so I did all this work and revamped stress and taking things out, and the cough disappeared. And the doctor was totally confused. How did you get rid of the cough? I'm like, I stopped eating peanuts. I stopped doing this. I started meditating, my breath work again. She's like, that shouldn't heal you. I'm like, well, I'm still in and out of the ER because I still had these spasms of like coughing and not being able to breathe once a month. It was like clockwork and no answers. So I was denied a CT because I was too young, and I knew that's where the answers were. I'm like, ugh. So my last ER visit was May of 2024. And when I was taken by ambulance and I said, I need a CT. And they're like, there is something wrong with you. You can't breathe. And I was checking all the boxes. My heart was fine, thank goodness. And then they got a CT and they're like, you have pneumonia. You've had pneumonia the whole time.
Wow.
And I'm like, I knew it. I knew it. I couldn't get anyone to check.
Mhm.
So they did that. It took me about 3 months to recover from that. But in
Mhm.
that time, they suddenly came back with all these heart problems. Like I might have pulmonary artery hypertension, which is a very serious condition,
Mhm.
but they didn't give me any answers. And I was devastated. I'm like,
Mhm.
because it's shock. And then I'm like, oh, go back and tune in. And I'm like, there was nothing wrong. I don't have this. But I was exhausted from pneumonia for so long. So I'm like, I was getting mixed messages from my body because it couldn't breathe. But it turned out I had probably inflammation, an enlarged pulmonary artery from
Mm.
my lung to my heart from coughing for almost 9 months and also having walking pneumonia for almost a year. Um, but once it was all said and done, I've been in to see the respirologist, autoimmune cleared off the table, lungs are back on track. I have been diagnosed with vocal cord dysfunction, which is
Mm.
essentially my vocal cords will just close whenever they want, which it's manageable.
Oh, wow.
It's not fatal. But because I had pneumonia, the vocal cord was were kind of strangling me. And so
Mm.
it's nothing that could be diagnosed. So you put those two together, and I had a really tough time. Let's put it that way. So I've been working with that. I'm on medication that has no side effects because I made that brutally clear. Like I need to see what's if I'm managing this, I'm not doing anything that's going to put I will do holistic if this is a lifetime of management. But I had my secondary checkup in January. They're like, you're doing well, your lungs are back on track. Um, and now I'm working on a couple of other things, but every time I tune in, I already know what's going on. And, I've been back to the doctor again, and they're like, oh, it's this. I'm like, no.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's a consistent advocacy for myself, but I've always come out on top.
Mhm.
But and I wish more people could tune into themselves and have faith and keep pushing because I knew there was something wrong. I knew, and it was none of these blanket put me into a box kind of deal. Um, and I also used all of my training. I was doing energy healing, I was doing the holistic, and that helped tremendously with
Mhm.
my healing and discovery of things. Do I think what I'm going through now is a result of, like, as you were saying earlier, it just be positive, or so
Mhm.
everything I'm going through. Part of it is a lifetime of stuff because it takes time for our vibration to shift. I do vibration work. That's what all of this work is. We're all vibrating. All matter vibrates. It has mass and it takes up space and it's vibrating. That's our universe. That's the 3D universe. So my vibrations and my frequencies are still balancing from patterns from decades.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I'm getting better and I think I'm shedding things and things are coming to surface. I can't determine my exit point or what's going to be my limiter,
Hmm.
but until then, I can shift my mindset subconscious because I genuinely believe our subconscious and the energy and the frequency we put forth will help our cells and our healing process. But yeah, when I look at it, um, especially those that have who are empaths, have a heightened, an increased risk of having health problems. But that's because they experienced a period of stress,
Hmm.
which may have led to poor behaviors and
Hmm.
patterns, thought patterns, or habits on oneself. Um, so empaths are at risk of it, but the same as the average person as well, too. So when I look at illness, I look at the physical, I look at the vibration, I look at the mental. Um, there are so many avenues to approach wellness and optimal health. I don't believe there's one perfect path, cookie cutter for everyone, but I
Hmm.
believe there's tools that people should have access to and play around with to find their 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 little I see a little cauldron, their own little cauldron that they put in and make their own little soup and go. Um, so yeah, when it comes to health and the whys of why we have certain conditions, I'm careful because people get like doing Akashic records work or past life work, or people can really punish themselves saying, I need to go back to my great great grandfather and this happened in my ancestral line and this. And sometimes it's like just focus on the energy now and let's start shedding,
Hmm.
and focus our energy in the present so we can move to the future. Um, yeah, so health and wellness. Oh goodness, you can see I could talk about this for a long time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I think that's great information. That's your wealth of knowledge. I could talk to you for hours about that too, because I do with my breast cancer. I do attribute that to a lot of stress and a very stressful job that I shouldn't have been in. And it's funny because when I, knew I had to leave that job, that's like soon after, that's when the cancer, when I found out about it, it was
Yep.
growing during that time. And I remember being in the grocery store a couple of years later, after all my treatments and healing. I met up with a woman who I worked with, and she knew how stressful things were. And she had done early retirement just to get out. And I said, oh, sometimes I regret leaving because I was all set. I was a manager, making really good money, and thought I would be working there for life, or I should have been. The should have been.
I hear you.
Yeah. And she said, well, because a lot of people at the organization, in those management positions, um, get sick, and a few had recently passed. Didn't make it through cancer. At least I know of one at that time. And she said, "Well, Laura, if you had stayed, maybe you would have not made it through." And it kind of hit me. Yes, that's
Yeah.
that. That's a definite possibility. So there is really a lot to it. I like your cauldron, of course,
Yep.
doing the Laurel Witch stuff that I do. I love that, but it's true. It's like throwing a whole bunch of different things and medical and all the magical stuff that um, sometimes we can't explain, or a
Yeah,
lot
this
of time.
stuff. Yeah. I say to my students, this magic is just stuff science hasn't caught up with.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny because as you were telling me your story about um, um, your can't think of it.
Lungs.
As you were telling me your story about lungs and pneumonia, so this week I've had terrible sinus problems, and when I just did a show, a psychic fair for 3 days,
Oh,
and
right.
the whole time I was stuffy. lots. It was terrible, but it was a really good and busy weekend. So got through it. It was great. But as you were telling me that story, I couldn't breathe, and that's when I got all stuffy. So that's energy exchange.
Yeah, sorry.
So thanks, Fiona. Um, so you do mediumship as well.
Yes.
So do you read for yourself? Do you, because that's what we're going to do at the end here. Do you read for your spirits or your spirit guides or the people
Oh,
who are watching over you?
I do connect with my guides. I don't spend a lot of time with loved ones, believe it or not. So that's why I
Mhm,
feel pretty confident in like going to go see someone for mediumship. I don't spend a lot of time with them.
mhm.
I spend time with my guides and my galactic channels and my council that I work with as well. I spend a lot of time with that for my own personal needs. But as for loved ones, I don't spend a lot of time with them. So
So are you interested in seeing if anything comes up
yes,
here then? Oh, that's
yes.
awesome. And a tea leaf reading. Have you had a tea leaf reading or have you done it before?
I haven't done it. I've had someone do a tea leaf reading for me once, and I've had a Turkish coffee reading as well too with someone who was practicing.
Hmm. I've never had a Turkish coffee reading and I've never tried it, but I'd love to. Why don't I try that? I don't know. I think I'm just sticking with tea leaves, but someday I have to get one of those too. So that's awesome. So should we try that then?
Yes, let's give her a go.
Awesome. So, what I typically do with people is, energy is energy, even though we're not even in the same city. You don't have to drink a cup of tea with me. I don't even have to drink the cup. It's just my tool, right? We don't have to touch each other's cards or anything to have a good reading. But because we are, looking at each other here and exchanging energy, I thought maybe we could just close our eyes, well, just to sort of switch our focus and put some intention towards who you'd like to connect with. And so take a minute and I'll do the same. And then when you're done, let me know and I'll open my eyes up too. Okay. I'm just going to pour my tea actually and get it ready so it's steeping a little bit. And so let me know. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm just going to turn the cup around. I don't really have it on camera here. A lot of spills happen, but I try and get all the tea leaves to the top of the cup as much as possible. And then I'm just turning it over. So you don't have to mention who you want to connect with, but what I'll do is I'll see what symbols come up. And then you can let me know at any time if you want to jump in and say if something resonates with you or if it's meaningful to you. So the handle represents you, and so I'm looking for who is closest to you. I'm just going to actually switch my glasses. So right away, actually earlier you mentioned birds, and sometimes I know it might feel corny saying that, but with all the different types of birds that I've seen in a cup, I do come out and say what I think the bird is. It looks like a little chick to you. So a little chick or a chickadee, that word's coming out. I think that it could be like you may see these birds. They're like the winter birds, the little chickadees that come out. So that's representing the person who I'm looking at, but also some how they look at you. So I'm feeling like it's an older energy, like a grandparent energy. They would have thought of you as a little chickadee or a little chick, so they took care of you. I'll just look a little bit further. There's I feel like it's a grandfather energy, and he's kind of a quiet guy. He might even fish. Um,
Yes.
Okay, okay. And he's just sitting there quiet, but kind of leaning back, maybe in a lawn chair, or I'm not quite sure. You don't usually fish as you're sitting down, maybe on a dock, or could be in a boat. And he's got his fishing pole here. I'll try and take pictures, and I probably should take them soon because things will start to fall. But I just want to, as I'm connected here, just continue on a little bit here. Around him, he's got symbols as if it's like a paddle of some sort. It could even be a cooking implement, like almost like a pizza oven paddle. Does that resonate with you?
Yes. Can I share or do you want me to share?
Oh, please
Yeah.
do. Yeah, whatever you feel.
So we moved to Canada. So I wasn't, I asked to speak with grandparents. So I didn't get to spend a lot of time with them, but my one granddad, my mom's dad, he used to go out to the lochs and fish. He was known for being a
Oh,
fisherman.
okay.
And he loved to cook. He loved to barbecue.
Um, so he must have passed some time ago.
A
He's
couple of years ago, yeah.
okay, so actually only a couple of years ago. So would that be would he be the one who would refer to you as a chickadee, or it's someone else who's closer? And it could be what I'm seeing is this little a little I'm going to say farm animal. It's possibly a little it's like this, it could be a piglet or something like that. I'm not quite sure if that's related to a farm or not, or it's
Uh,
really cute.
I did have a grandfather that passed, and I was only a few months old. So he would have seen me only as a baby on this side.
So would he have uh, any reference to a farm or farm animals?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, unless it's a cute little dog that looks like a little piglet. Okay, I'll just look around further. There is a female energy, and there's this woman with a shoe. So I have a lot of boots and shoes in my readings because my maiden name is Bootland. So there's this really pretty shoe with a woman, and it's like there's this feather coming out. I see her with like almost like a feather out of her cap as well. So if I think about that, it's sort of a woman who definitely liked to dress up and look good, that type of woman. She might have had, we were talking about symbols of reproductive symbols, she might have lost a child or had issues with her ovaries or reproductive system. Would that be related to a grandparent?
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
Um, both of my grandmothers, again in Scotland, and I grew up here. Um, it's a possibility,
Okay.
but both of them really like to take care of themselves.
Okay.
So
There could be some older people as well with them because I'm seeing more boots and they're older style for sure. You mentioned Scotland, so it feels actually quite royal or regal the way they're dressed. Do you know your ancestry? Do you have any royalty?
there is a connection through my mother's side of the family. They were staff of Queen Victoria, like I not servants, but like they worked like medically around her, part of the medical offices. Um,
Okay.
and there is a possibility down my father's line. I'm just not too sure. So
Okay. Okay. Um, there seems to be something possibly related to that, and it's in water. And I'll point it out. I'll put it up on the screen, and it's around water, and it looks like a some sort of implement, like a medical implement. When you said they worked in the medical field, do you know if they did medical procedures?
my understanding is one may have actually been a general surgeon
Mm-hmm.
for the royal family. My understanding. The last time I spoke to one of my mother's relatives, like my on my mom's side, she had done some genealogy and she had discovered that part of the medical team, one of our relatives on her our my mom's side was a surgeon, a doctor for the Queen.
You
So
said Queen Victoria?
yeah.
I should have worn my shirt. I've got not Queen Victoria, but I really have to show you the symbol. And then beside it is my snake. So the snake is like the caduceus, the staff with the snakes up, and it's always related to health, and that is the medical field. So it's so funny that we were talking a lot about that beforehand. And this symbol is almost like a oh my goodness, why wouldn't I know that symbol? When we get pap smears, sorry, being
Yes.
so you know the what's that tool that they use to open up your
Oh,
cervix?
um,
Very hard.
I know exactly what when you're talking about. I can't remember right now. I can see it.
The dreaded cold
Yes.
clamp. That's what I'm seeing in here, and really interesting that there's royalty in here, and then these medical tools and the snake. And I really feel like that's in your ancestry. And maybe do you feel like you've got your medical intuition ancestrally, if that makes
Yes,
sense?
I do. I
Okay.
do. And I believe it's on both sides. I'm just not aware of my dad's side, but
Okay.
I genuinely believe it comes from both.
I think that's really interesting. There's also my crab symbol in here too. So that's usually an East Coast symbol. Do you know if they were from East Coast Scotland or East
Um,
Coast England?
Most of my family is connected to Glasgow and Edinburgh and Broxburn in the middle there. My mom's family is from more outside Edinburgh, Bowness, and then my father, yeah, it was Broxburn just outside Glasgow. So that's that area more central. East Coast um, could have several meanings. I'm just curious to see where the East Coast, what the East Coast is connected to.
It's near the snake, so I don't know
Mm,
if that would be related at all. I kind of want to jump to some of these other
mm.
symbols that
Yes.
make it seem like royalty, and it feels like your ancestors like not only just worked for the royal family, it was like they were high up themselves, so they were respected and able to like enjoy life. Like, were they part of the court or something like that?
There's a sense of that. And also I've had other just blanket genealogy that if we go back further into our ancestry, on my mom's side, from northern France as well too. And also there's a Viking connection as well there too. On my mother's side, my father's side, there's more connection to like Robert the Bruce and going up that line,
Mm-hmm.
connections with that and defending and from what I can tell. And there's a touch of my last name, Waddell, is known in Northern Ireland and also in Scotland as well. So there's a rich history there. So a connection to royalty is very possible.
That's really interesting. I'm seeing the connection to France makes sense because I'll show you again in the pictures after. There's a peacock, and that's definitely my France reference. I watch a lot of YouTube chateau shows, and I've watched all the DIY chateaus and peacocks. That's my symbol for chateaus. So definitely a royal feeling there. I almost feel like there was, though, some sort of procedure that possibly was on the queen or someone royal using going back to the clamps for, but they wouldn't have, I don't think they would have had that then. I have no idea. But it's just a sign that maybe they worked on a woman with some issues,
Well, she did
reproductive
have
issues.
several, well, she had several children, right? So
Mhm.
they could have been involved with a lot of that as well, too.
I love that. I'm so interested in that. I have a bit of an obsession with the royals and the past. We were always thought of as having being related to Mary, Queen of Scots.
Hmm.
But when I did my ancestry, I didn't see that at all. For that grandmother, my Scottish grandmother, I actually saw her related to, and I'd have to do more work on this because I'm sort of a hack at ancestry. I just go with what everyone
I
else,
hear you.
all the work they've done. And that went back to the Mayflower. And so one of the men who came over, um, uh, his last name was Priest, and he died that winter. And so one of his, um, great grandchildren, probably my great grandmother, she was an herbalist. And so if she was born, many years before, she probably would have been thought of as a witch.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting to see that. And I don't really work with herbs myself, but I really think that's interesting that you do medical intuition and you might have this in your background. Um, so let me just look a little bit further because I know that's stuff that we can't really, confirm. That's for sure, but really interesting that that would come out in the cup. Um, there's also someone who is quite important in your life or big in your life who has moved on, um, and they're either whistling or singing a song, and it seems to be coming from their throat. So I'm not sure if they had any issues with
Hmm.
with their throat. It could be a communication. They didn't get a chance to say what they needed to say. It's just like pointing at the throat area.
Hmm.
Do you know of anyone who had issues there?
Um, well, I did have an aunt that passed that I hadn't spoken to for there were big Scottish family, stuff happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I never really heard from. And then she transitioned. Now there was never really any closure in that area. Um, not like nothing that I'm actually carrying energy with, but there
Yeah.
was like zero closure. Like we found out through Facebook that she had transitioned. But she was a big part of me growing up. Um, and looking back now on the work that I do, it doesn't justify the stuff that happened back then, but I
Mm-hmm.
can see why. So, it could very well be this person because they were a smoker.
Okay.
I do remember them as a smoker, a heavy
Mhm.
smoker. Um, but yeah, there was no communication
Okay.
per se. So the two go hand in hand because I would also know them as the person that smoked. Like I grew up watching this person eat Scotch mints and then smoke both at the same time. It was an art. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
it could very well be them.
Okay. So I'll read the symbols that are around her and see if, because they don't make any sense to me, and
Mm.
I don't, sometimes I don't even want to read them out. But there's a gecko or a lizard. It could be, does that resonate with you at all?
Mm. It could explain kind of stuff that happened. Shedding skins and changing colors kind of
Mm-hmm.
matches
Mm-hmm.
to kind of what happened here. But also I knew they were a sun lover. So that goes hand in hand. So that has multiple meanings.
It's also it could be a Florida symbol. I haven't,
That's where she passed.
okay, because I haven't
Yeah.
had a gecko or lizard show up, but that's the words that came to me when I saw the symbol. And again, I'll point it out in
I
the.
believe she transitioned while she was in Florida.
Okay,
So, or on her trip down south.
okay,
I don't know if she was in the Carolinas or if she was in Florida.
and that's where I'm taking another picture just in case. That's where I seen a lot of geckos, and it was a big thing, and lizards, in the parking
Yes.
lots all around, and I just thought that was the neatest thing. So that's sort of a symbol that would pop up for me. And so if she was a smoker, I can see sort of these, sometimes when I see grapes, it's weird. I have grapes symbols. So,
Mm,
and it seems like a pulmonary thing. So it would
it
be,
was.
okay. Okay.
So yeah.
So I'll point that out too. Do you know if she had, there's like two people on her back. They're very tiny people. So would she have had children, or would that be you and your sibling?
She still has three kids, adult children now,
Hmm.
who are very much alive. If are you talking about on that side with her?
No, it doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean that. It's just sort of like it could be she felt like she was carrying people on her back.
Yeah, I could see that.
There is love there. There's a big heart there. There's also a butterfly that's
Hmm.
related to her. So it's kind of flying above. It's like remembering the good times. There's a piece of hair attached to the butterfly. So whenever I see a piece of hair, and I know it's not yours because we're not in the
Hmm.
same room, we're not even in the same city, but it could be a fluff from my sweater or what have you. But whenever I read that, even if it's from me, it's like that's extra important. It's like your essence is put in here and it was very important to you. So that could be looking back at the memories from her.
And I've tried to do that. Like taking out family politics. I went through a phase probably during COVID when I just started releasing all of that because I couldn't justify being a healer and doing the work that I do and not talk to somebody for 20 years or not talk to somebody, just did a family stuff. And so I healed and worked on all of that. So that when I look back at the relationship with this aunt, there's an understanding like there's stuff she needs to work out with other relatives. But when it comes to me, yeah, there were many more good times than they were bad times.
Oh, that's good.
And I can understand now from my energy perspective the behaviors that she was exhibiting. That
Mhm.
makes sense.
Okay. Was there anyone who you were wanting to hear from that we haven't?
Well, no, you've touched on. I was just curious if my other grandfather had come in
Okay.
or if there's any grandmothers because it seems I'm happy that granddad's come in and the aunts come in.
So the grandmother, I know I started off with a grandmother energy, but it turned into like older
Yeah.
relatives who were related to uh, working with the queen, but they're attached. So there is still this feeling about like this little piglet or this little cute animal, and around her is this female energy with a nice shoe as well. So,
Mm.
but to find a symbol here that, let me just look here. There's a Big Dipper. It looks like the Big Dipper. That's astronomy, the stars. I don't know if that's related to her.
Oh, that might be my mother's mother.
So how would that make sense? Or
Uh, Daughters of the Eastern Star.
what's that? I don't.
It's the Freemasons, the Masons, the Scottish Rite, the women. Now I don't know if she was, but my mother was. Um, so the men would do their Mason stuff, do their meetings, and then the women would get together, Daughters of the Eastern Star. I hope I have that right.
That's neat.
And I don't know if my grandmother was, but I associate that with my mother, which would associate that with my mother's
Hmm.
mother.
Hmm. That's really interesting. So does that have anything to do with peacocks? The peacock reference?
Well, that's my mother's lineage is the one that's connected to France.
Okay, because the constellation is near the peacock.
Yeah.
There's also another symbol that I relate to one of the Mother Peace tarot cards, and I can't think of what it is. I think it's the stars, and there's this figure of this woman who is maybe I can take a picture of that too. But there's this woman who is like part of the sky, and she's leaning over it. There could be some meaning to that, so I'll look into that
Yeah.
deck. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I'll take a picture and look at the description and see if there's any meaning to that. And there's this star right above her too. So that could be for sure in there. Let me just see. There's a my that's funny, the heat in my building. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yes.
All of a sudden started ticking. An angel at the top of a sitting on the top of a cloud. So that's always someone who has religion in their background, but they almost seem like they're like either quite religious or part of a choir that would be in church, or they carol, Christmas carol, or
That sounds like my dad's mom. And I don't know if she was in a choir, but I had a cup from her, a mug for years from the church that was in her village. She was always helping and volunteering with them.
oh, and did she there's a snake around her too, so that represents an illness. Sometimes that even represents a mental illness.
Or that could be my mother's mother. I'm not too sure how my father's mother, my paternal grandmother passed. I know my mother's mother passed from Alzheimer's and cancer. Um, and she was in care near the end.
There's a candle. All the leaves are starting to fall. There's a candle, like a one candle that's lit. And then there's a symbol, and then there's an H. So I don't like to read um, initials very often, but it looks like an H to me.
I'm
Like,
not too sure.
okay,
That wouldn't be her name
okay,
that I know of unless it's a middle name.
okay. So I just point that out, but maybe that means something or possibly doesn't. It just looks like it almost looks like I love H, but it's a candle and a something and then an H. Maybe I'll look at the picture and might see something different there. I can show you here. The candle's right there.
Yep.
Some sort of symbol here and then an H. Can you see the H?
Yes.
So I'm not sure.
See, for me, I don't see the H. What I
Mhm.
see is the candle and two people coming together.
Yep, there's that too for sure, almost holding hands. So the that would be the two people, and then the hands would be the H.
So that could almost be both sets of my grandparents because there was a big difference between their passings of each other. So that to me is kind of like a validation that they're together. And that
Amazing.
almost would be both. That heart, instead of it being a heart, it might be a times two kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
That they
Looks
were
like
brought
two
because they were
hearts.
separated along like at least a decade for my mom's side between my grandparents and a few decades for my dad dad's side, his parents, before they were reunited.
Oh, well, there it does look like two hearts. There's also a bird right around there as well. Oh, I hope I could show that. This tiny little bird. I think my
Oh, I
picture's
see
not.
it.
You see that? What kind
Yeah.
of bird does that look like to
It
you?
looks like a sparrow to me. A sparrow.
And do you see sparrows?
I have a lot of sparrows here, sparrows and actually chickadees. So that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
they're both here. So,
Okay. I don't see sparrows here. Sometimes chickadees, and not seen one chickadee out my windows. We took down our bird feeder last year, but we used to
oh,
have them all the time. But interesting, the sparrows that you see. That's great. So that's pretty much it. The leaves are drying out really quickly. There is one more bird here too, and it could be with a cane. So someone who would have had some mobility issues. Sorry, I'm trying to point right there. A bird
Hmm.
flying, and then a cane right here.
Okay. That could have been either my mom's dad or my dad's mom. Yeah.
So there's a lot of activity in here, a lot of people. Do you feel any of these people around you?
I have asked for them to come in. I've been to mediums like over the years. Like I don't go for mediumship readings often.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those. So I think the last mediumship reading I had was about five, no, 4 years ago. It was in a class. So we had to practice on each other. And my grandfather came through. Both grandfathers came through.
Mhm.
I've had people approach me and tell me about my granddad having coming to
Mhm.
visit me when I was a baby and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, so I know I'm loved, and so I have this kind of understanding where they don't need to like show up and give me messages if they
Yeah.
think I'm on the right track, you know?
Hmm.
So I know they're there. Like I've always trusted that they were there. It was interesting that the aunt came through because I always wondered if she wanted to check in,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
So that was nice. Because I've been doing a lot of work with healing with Ho'oponopono just to heal the bridge and everything like that. Um, so yeah, I've always how can I say this? As somebody who teaches ancestral healing,
Hmm.
um, it is very important for me, but I haven't sat and communed with them. So it's nice knowing I feel like the cup has really come alive with a lot of different things. That's why things are overlapping,
Yeah.
is because they actually are all here, but I feel like they're along for the ride and they're enjoying it. Does that make sense?
It totally does. It doesn't feel like there are lots of messages here for you. And you read it as just like I do, and you saw something that I didn't. So that's not surprising. The one thing that I will mention, so I'll show you here, that's your aunt right here, and she's moving forward. Sorry, there's the gecko or the lizard right here.
Yeah.
Right below it is a moon. It's a full moon. So that's for me, with what I do with the cards that I use too. The moon symbol is that women's intuition, very women's energy, feminine energy, the dark, moody nighttime where the sun, and I don't see it as the sun would be that male energy, and bright, quick actions. So that's like your this moody, feminine feeling
Hmm.
around your aunt. Plus, with I guess the Florida reference. So that's really awesome. I'm going to take pictures and show you because so just going back, one thing that's bugging me is this little piglet, or maybe it's a dog.
Could it be a cat?
It sure could, but it seems quite rotund or
Yeah.
wishable, lovable.
Oh. I have a feeling I have about, oh goodness, one, two, three, four cats that have crossed over,
Okay.
and they were all big boys.
Big boys, BOI.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's them just coming in. Because I did, when I was setting the intention, I said, if you are around, let me know. But I
Okay.
kind of just, and then you didn't really touch on it. But now I'm wondering if that little piglet, because they were all very big.
Well, it's like I have it's because I it's bugging me and I have to go back to it. It's actually the closest to you. And there's a bird above it too. So that's the first thing I mentioned. So there's this, I thought it was like this cute little piglet, and then there's a bird right around it.
They did like watching the birds.
So, and that's at the handle. So if that was someone that you put intention to, your animals, they would have shown up like the closest to you. So,
Yeah, not surprised. We have six
yes.
cats right now, so
Do you?
we are a cat house. We end up rescuing them and taking care of them. But
Yeah.
I saw a psychic medium years ago when I was in university, and they did, I think, a necklace or a psychometry, and they're like, "You're going to have two boys," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I know I wasn't going to because I've got some stuff. So I'm like, no. But I had these two male cats that were just like my babies.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, so for that rotund cat,
Hmm.
I put it because I had a cat when I was younger, Sparky, and then I had Tigger, which was our family cat before I moved out, and then my two boys, and they were all big boys. You know,
Okay.
when they transitioned, they might have lost weight, but I knew them as my big boys.
Okay.
So that makes sense because whenever I have an animal unfortunately transition here, they always show up. They always come as a vision to me, sitting as a
Mhm.
council, and they always have a spot free for the next one. So
Oh,
they they are my little guides. They are my
I
little
love
angels.
I love that. I have a big girl at home. So big, and she is that squishy, and but it's like this cute little piglet type of thing. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you for doing this with
Thank you.
me. I'm going
Yes.
to take pictures. I'll put it up in the video. And I'll look into that tarot card too, because just with that woman, I'll show you the picture of it because it's just a very moody feeling too,
Yeah.
along with your aunt. So, do you want to talk about anything else before we sign off?
No, this was brilliant. This is it's nice to check in with mediumship. I know as somebody who does mediumship, um, sometimes there are no messages, and
Yeah,
just them being there is like, okay, um, and that's all they really want to do. They want to keep us in a high vibration,
yeah.
and help us feel good. Because once they get over there, it's like, oh, they get it, right?
Hmm.
So it's nice just to know they're all there. And then my feelings about my ancestry and um this type of work, it seems that it's kind of being validated in that cup, which is really nice. So no, I'm very grateful and I appreciate the reading. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's amazing. And I think that's what happens in my tea leaf readings. It's not like if people ask for if there's any messages, it's basically what your spirit guides are telling you, but it's often like just to find out who's on your team and
Mm,
who's watching over you. And so that's amazing. Thank you very much.
yes, thank
And
you.
oh, what's your website and where should people find you?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So my website is
Hmm.
www.fionawaddell.ca/homepage.
Okay.
Everything's there. I'm also on social media, so Facebook and Instagram, but you can see that and I'll send that to you. You can put that in the
Okay.
bottom. But I do offer like a free 3-day Awaken Your Intuition course. I have a free Facebook group where I do card readings and it's created to network other women together in a high vibe, safe space. And yeah, that's how you reach out and get in touch with me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. It's so nice seeing you, and I really appreciate you joining me on this.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. Thanks, Fiona, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.